President Cyril Ramaphosa will address the Afrikanerbond centenary celebrations in Paarl in the Western Cape tonight. The Afrikanerbond, previously known as the Afrikaner Broederbond, was established on the 5th of June 1918 to look after the economic and cultural interests of Afrikaners. The Presidency says his attendance is an opportunity to engage the Afrikanerbond openly about his vision for the country. Well, to discuss, we're joined by political analyst Dr. Piet Croukamp. Thank you for being with us, Doctor. So let's just go back, because it's got an interesting history. So this was a cultural organization, but it landed up basically running policy, government, the SABC.
Yeah, I honestly don't think it's ever been merely a cultural organization. I think it was established to in some other way consolidate the Afrikaners' presence in politics, and as the response to British colonialism and to, say, the marginalization of Afrikaans and Afrikaners in general in politics here around about 1920s. So I don't think it was a cultural organization. It always had a political interest.
And a lot of secrecy. It was a secret organization.
Yeah, it was a secret organization, and that was also, I think, perhaps the reason why so many people are suspicious of it, even to this day, even though it's not a secret anymore. And then it was Calvinistic. It was highly religious. It was very specific, male-dominated, white Afrikaner, male-dominated organization, very exclusive. And over time, I think in the 60s and 70s, it really spread its influence to government and government positions and the bureaucracy. It was not possible. It was very difficult to become a cabinet minister if you're not a member of the Broederbond. It was difficult to get a position on the railways, in the bureaucracy, anywhere in the state, unless you'd been a member of either one of the three sister churches, or at least the NG Church, or you had been a white Afrikaner male.
So that was the ultimate state capture, in fact. When we talk about state capture now, that was it.
I think you could describe it as a form of state capture, but what's interesting is how they captured the economy. The apartheid system was really a way of capturing the economy, taking control of the economy, and use that as a foundation for the political authority of the state, to the Afrikaners. Yeah.
So looking back, I've heard analysis where people say Afrikaner identity was becoming a little bit fragmented. There was so much integration. Afrikaners were losing economic power. So you had the Broederbond rise up, and a lot of what we think is Afrikaner identity today was engineered to some extent. What do you think of that?
Yeah, look, it's always been social engineering, the rise of Afrikaner politics to the management and the control of the state, and thereafter really influencing the education system, every part of the society, the economy, the political system, the cultural system. They tried to permutate it and to influence it and to manage it to the benefit of the Afrikaners, and to benefit it to the, for a white state. So it's never been innocent. It always had a master narrative, a grand agenda to dominate, to control, and to exclude.
Yeah, that was so you raise the Afrikaner, you suppress African labor.
Well, you had to exploit African labor. You had to exploit the fact that it was possible for you to exclude black South Africans, and even the English to a certain degree. You know, when the Afrikaners, I think, took over in 1945, around about 60% of the police force, I'm told, was English speaking, and 3 or 4 years later it was hard to find Englishmen in the police force. So they really penetrated even the coercive forces of the state. They controlled everything, but not in a very aggressive way, in a secretive way, in a way that almost the type of dishonest politics that was driven by the Afrikaner identity.
So how many people belong to this set now? What sort of role does the Afrikanerbond have in the new South Africa?
No, I think it's frivolous cultural politics that they still play now. They claim they have between 3,000 and 3,500 members, which they call about 1,500. They call resting members, which means they either not present or they don't pay their dues or whatever, the resting members that they have. So I would say around about 1,500 members. I've actually addressed them. I've spoken at some of the gatherings before. They're very old, very, very old. There's not a lot of young faces around there.
But President Cyril Ramaphosa is choosing to address the Afrikanerbond before he jets off to Canada.
It blows my mind. They actually tell us that the president postponed his visit to overseas so that he can address them. You must take them very seriously if you do that. And it reminds me a bit of the visit that Nelson Mandela made to Urania it doesn't explain anything, because it's really a fraction of the Afrikaners today do associate in some other way, say with the Afrikanerbond of the Urania. We're talking about 2 to 3 or 4 or 5%. So to me, it doesn't make sense. I don't have a clue what is the PR exercise of the president in talking to the Afrikanerbond.
So you're saying if presumably it's about getting people on board with everything, their concerns about land expropriation. No. I don't know. So you're saying this is not the way to speak to Afrikaners in general?
They don't represent anybody. They don't really don't represent anybody. I don't know why the president think it's worth speaking to them, because they don't represent Afrikaners. They don't have a specific narrative in land reform. They don't contribute to policy really in South Africa. They attached to or linked up with small groups like the FAK and perhaps the Frederik the F.W. de Klerk Stichting, you know, it's all these informal type of arrangements that they have, but they have no influence. They don't determine policy. And they are a very, very small group of people. So
if you're a president wanting to reach Afrikaner people in January...
It's the wrong organisation to go for.
It is how meaningless. Do you do that?
It is meaningless. No, I honestly think you have to talk to business, because that's where Afrikaners are involved. You have to talk to industry, because that's where Afrikaners are involved. You have to, in some other way, deal with the economic system and land and farmers. That's where they're in the free market system, in the enterprising individuals. They don't have this archaic political system that they still nurture on the background somewhere. They're a very modernized, evolved society to a large degree. Unfortunately, they mostly vote for the DA nowadays as a form of... I once said to Gary Matash, I once said to Gary Matash, the Afrikaners in the DA are actually not very comfortable there. They are very conservative people, like most black South Africans. The only reason why they're at the DA is because they flee from the ANC. But if you can in some other way find a narrative which will, like the land reform debate, it's very, very possible that the vast majority of Afrikaners will buy into land reform if it's done in a responsible way. And it's possible that they and the ANC might have a lot more in common than they think.
You're talking about Afrikaner fears. On the other side, there's still this fear of, I think, Afrikaner privilege, you know, the Stellenbosch set, holding on to that former economic power. How strong is that?
Well, I think it's enormously strong, and the reason why it's strong is because they don't realize it. If you talk to Afrikaners, well, they don't know, but they will deny it. And it is hard for them to really understand why people think that they are privileged, because they think they worked hard for their money. They think that they had a very troubled history. They think that they in some other way had to make massive sacrifices to come where they are. They think of themselves as a long-suffering people to a large degree. It's very difficult to convince somebody like that there's actually somebody else that on whose shoulders and on whose bodies they have to step to get where they are, because the Afrikaners don't see themselves as a glorious nation that existed for 300 years. They see themselves as a suffering and a troubled people who survived despite or in spite of massive political
which you obviously believe is false.
Well, it's a lot more complicated than they understand it. I don't think it's as romantic as they paint it. Yeah.
Steinhoff, though, has been symbolic of a downfall of business, saying we work hard, we throw stones at government. Do you think that'll change things?
Well, I think that there's a bit of the romanticism of Afrikaner capitalism and Afrikaner success in the international free market and the global economy has taken a bit of a battering, you know. But honestly, I don't think that in some other way it signifies the real Afrikanerdom and how they define themselves. I don't think it will make a dent on it. Remember, just 5 or 6% of Afrikaners are really rich, maybe even not 5, maybe 2 or 3%. The rest of them are middle class, lower middle class, and some of them are upper middle class people. There's not this massive wealth amongst Afrikaners. They have a demographic dividend, which means they have capital, they have assets, they have access to capital and assets, they have good health, and they have good education. So they have a broad demographic dividend. But generally, Afrikaners are not as wealthy as a lot of people think.
All right, thanks. Interesting analysis, and we'll take you live to Cyril Ramaphosa, President Cyril Ramaphosa, speaking to the Afrikanerbond when that happens. Analyst Dr. Piet Croukamp saying it's a bit of a wasted effort to try and reach Afrikaners tonight. We'll take a short break. We'll be back.